are my friends. Come along with me, see how the story ends.
What's up, all you professional hippies out there? Hey, thanks for joining us another week. We love having you here. And if this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome. The whole premise of our show is to have on people that we feel like embody what it means to be a professional hippie, whatever it means to you. So that could be stocks and bonds, very professional, wear a tie stuff. That could be hippie woo woo. And ideally, we meet that somewhere in the middle. And today's guest, I'm so pleased to introduce Jarrod. Jarrod, thanks for coming on, buddy. I want to give you a little bit of a formal intro, if that's okay. So the highlights: father of three.
Yep.
Sounds like we have some accomplished creatives coming through the pipeline too. I think one of the neatest things to really honor you for is being married for almost 24 years. That's big, man.
Yeah.
From Texas originally, right? Seventh generation.
Oh yeah, born and raised.
That's sick. For whatever reason, he wanted to make sure I let you guys know he was in the boys choir. And was it 92, 93?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe even earlier.
That's
It's the Amarillo Boys Choir, to be specific. Colton.
very important to note. Originally went to school for marriage and therapy. Did I get that right?
Marriage and family therapy, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Family therapy. Okay. There's different types of therapy. We know that. Worked for a few nonprofits. But I think here's one of the things that I was so impressed when I originally met you is that you're such a cool, calm, collected guy. But make no mistake about it, where you rose to when I was hearing your progression throughout your career, like that speaks volume to like your IQ, your EQ, your ability to lead, self-manage, regulate emotions. Like we'll get into that a little bit. I don't want to steal any thunder from what you accomplished and where you're at now, but as a little bit of a tease, did leave from an executive position at Amazon to pursue real estate full time. And that's huge. But I think the thing that I would be remiss if I did not mention, he is the man behind Arrows in the Wild. So if you haven't heard of the infamous Instagram page, Arrows in the Wild, let me make sure I plug that now. But without further ado, welcome to the episode, brother. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Colton. I appreciate that. Yes, Arrows in the Wild. Yeah, I have to say, you inspired me to start posting again. Lena too, who you also know. So I was really thankful that you guys encouraged me, because that's been a little fun side project for a long time. So, but
well, yes, I think that's the coolest thing. Like we should celebrate the quirky side of humanity, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That for whatever reason, that seemed to be something you shied away from. And it's like that's what makes humans fun. We all have our things, and I'll proudly say like lasers are my thing. So we could do a cross post collab. I could put a laser arrow maybe for your page or something like that.
Send it to me. Yeah, I don't even know about. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, now I'm going to be looking for one. Yeah, arrows are. I don't know if we'll get into it or not, but yeah, I'll save it. We'll see if we naturally get to that point, but we'll let the suspense hang out there a little bit.
Yeah, maybe it'll come up. But no, I appreciate you coming on, man, because the thing that really drew me to you when we initially met in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah,
was definitely like that demeanor of just like being hungry to there to learn, to show up, to participate. That was part of the Go Abundance experience, to give some context or texture there. But yeah, I think that was like right off the back of you basically making the move to pursue real estate full time, essentially.
Yeah, that was kind of my first quote unquote event with Go Abundance specifically, but like, yeah, it was pretty soon after I had left my full-time role. So yeah.
So before we get into that too much, because I mean that's definitely some meat and potatoes I'd love to dig into, but just to understand like your background, because that I don't think I even remember you talking too much about that with like the creative side, the arts, nonprofits. Help me understand how you got there, and then from there how you get into Amazon and what comes with that, and all the Prime stuff.
Yeah, well, that's actually, I don't even know. So this will be fun. We'll go on this journey together. Yeah, so I grew up again in Texas, Amarillo. Amarillo is actually a It's in the Panhandle. It's a really interesting place to grow up. It's high desert, lots of good art there. You've probably heard of the Cadillac Ranch. That's there. Like, it just has this really strong undercurrent of art. My mom was an art teacher. My dad is a business person, manager, has managed companies. So I kind of have this, like, that's in my DNA. As a kid, I tended to be more of a creative. And I can remember at a very early age just loving to draw. Like, but I also loved to be in nature, and I enjoyed, sports and mountain biking. And in Amarillo, there's the canyon, Paldera Canyon, which is quick plug, second largest canyon in the nation.
Really?
The Grand Canyon, yes. And it's in a spectacular place, and it was where I spent a lot of my summers. I was in Boy Scouts. I went there, and so all of that sort of is my conditioning as a child, right? So it's nature, it's art, it's music. I was in boys choir. I played drums. I was in band, and so all of that was interesting to me. But I also was the kid who, like, in Boy Scouts would outsell everyone when I was selling popcorn. I remember we went to the mall one time. We were selling shopping bags, custom shopping bags, and I just like I don't know, for some reason I just loved to just sell, and there was just always a strong entrepreneurial streak in me. I was always trying to figure out how to make money. It's funny because I watch my son, and he does this. Like, he'll sell gum. When he was growing up, he would sell gum at school, and he'd come home with all this money. He got in trouble for it, which I was like, way to go, man.
Yeah, like oddly proud of.
Yeah, it was great. I think it's funny. My grandfather, I think about him a lot. He's 102, still alive, lives in Dallas, World War II vet. But he didn't finish the fourth grade, and he worked for Cadillac. He started as a mechanic and then became a salesman. He was the number one salesman in the nation 2 years in a row, I think in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember which. But so this is my makeup, right? This is who I am. This is like what I'm exposed to, what's in my DNA. And I think to answer your question a little less directly is I think I've always been kind of at war within myself, right? When I was growing up, of like my creative side, and then this other side, which loved business, and and even today, like I still sort of vacillate between, like, I can go uber creative and like go there, and and get philosophical on art and nature and whatever, and I can also look at a spreadsheet and analyze a multifamily deal and do the underwriting, and there's a lot of Venn diagram kind of middle area with that. I'm still learning to be okay with it, but I ultimately, when I was a kid, I just remember wanting to be an artist. Like, that's what I wanted to be. I didn't even know what that was really, but I also wanted to be an architect. I remember a counselor told me that I wasn't going to be an architect because I wasn't any good at math. So screw that person. I hope they finally woke up to how they were.
I'm sure they hold on to it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Although they probably saved me a lot of heartache because, I love architecture, but being an architect is tough. And
sounds like you love the idea of it.
I love the idea of it. I just love buildings, right? I love architecture, which is probably where that's the middle of the Venn diagram with real estate. It is the built environment, right? And really loving that idea of how you can influence and not only your own life but other people's life through through structure, which is a very creative pursuit. And I've done building, I've done all the trade. Like, I can do a lot. Like, I grew up, my neighbor was a plumber, and I remember during the summers I would crawl under houses with him, and he would teach me how to sweat pipe, and but I always loved working with my hands. And so there, again, I think there's these crossovers between this idea, or this reality of being a creative kid, and also being interested in things that were outside of pure art, like design, which design is not art. It borrows from art, but it's a creative pursuit in and of itself. I'll say one last thing, and this probably gives you some insight into kind of my own, navigating my own journey. Growing up in West Texas, right? West Texas is, I said it was a very creative place, like Emerald. It's hidden, right? You kind of have to unearth it a little bit. In fact, there's a new book just written, and I'll remember the name here in a second. I just ordered it. I just started reading it, about the art in West Texas, and specifically in the Panhandle. And this is going to come across kind of direct, but I remember growing up, right? West Texas is Texas. It's ranching, it's cattle, it's football, it's, Friday Night Lights, it's oil and gas, tough people stuff. And I remember I quit football when I was a sophomore in high school because I wanted to do art AP because I wanted to apply to go to art school. And I remember my friends, one specifically being like, "What are you, a fag?" Right? And like, at this point in my life, I'm like, that kid, he's responding to his environment, his conditioning, right? But that was the kind of thing that was present, right? Of course, I didn't like go back and play football. I went because there was a good community of supporting people, but that was like, that encapsulates sort of the environment that I grew up in. And so on this sort of indirect journey to answer your question, I think that's how I ended up, at Amazon, right? Is like, I've always kind of been interested in this crossover between creativity and business. And I wanted to be an art teacher at one point. And I remember looking at the curriculum, looking at the school, looking at, the time it would take to get the education and then what it would pay afterwards. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. My mom was an art teacher. I love art teachers. In some ways, I, would love to go teach art again if money wasn't the obstacle, right? But I'm also very economically motivated, right? So I've always kind of looked for those places where creativity, art, and business kind of overlap. And for me, that was design. And design was like, the place where it served people, it leveraged creativity. I could work with other creative people, but ultimately, you're getting paid well. you're in a and that I rode the wave of kind of, I started in brand design, graphic design, communication design, and we started doing apps and websites and apps, and then like UX and UI sort of took off, and I kind of rode that wave. And I won't talk a ton about that, but that's how I ended up at Amazon specifically, and I worked at some other companies too, but I went a lot of places there, Colton. There's just peeled back some layers, man. Where do you want to go?
No, that's cool. I think that oddly enough, like one of the things that stood out to me was just that moment of getting called out by your peers, friends, and whatever. Because I think we don't put, in some ways, some people I feel like put too much credence on our upbringing, right? At a certain point, you have to parent yourself. You have to go back to those years and realize I'm an adult now. I can undo the windings if you put enough effort into it. And this is my own opinion, of course, but if you put enough effort into it, you can go back and give enough grace to others that maybe didn't have it for themselves, or their influences, etc. But in some ways, I wonder if that was kind of a galvanizing moment for you to go, do I really want to do this path? Because when you feel like the crab effect, the crab bucket effect, right? Your peers trying to pull you back to whatever the mean and normal is. For me, that was my experience. I got poked and prodded, and I feel like a lot of us do. And either you kind of rise up, and it does separate the what's the curd analogy or whatever. It just kind of gives you that. Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm doing this essentially, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of those experiences sound like influenced you. I don't know that if you were left to your own vices or nature nurture, if those would have been teased out as much, right? Like being raised in an environment where you're exposed to so many different things, that's super cool, and an experience that probably not a lot of people have. Working with your hands, but also wanting to be a creative. Being in sales all my life, immediately what I was trying to do is figure out like, hey, what are you? right? Like I kind of think about people in 4 quadrants, and I'm like, it's like that innovator, creative energy, but also like very analytically driven.
Yeah.
And that's just not a combination I come across. Like you're one of those people that if I had to sell you something, I feel like it'd either be the easiest sell in the world or like the hardest sell in the world because you either want it or you don't.
That's interesting. I've never thought about how people. Yeah, I've been sold many times. I'm probably a little skeptical on from. Well, it's interesting. I sold roofs for a while when I lived in Denver between
Did you?
jobs. I did, and that's the hardest thing to do. I think that's the hardest thing I've ever done
Mm-hmm.
because that's most people don't want you to be anywhere near them because roofers or roof salesmen have such a bad reputation.
Yeah.
And but I was fairly successful because I'm pretty personable, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to like I'm not a good salesman, which I think made me better in that scenario because I don't have all the training. I was just like, listen, you can buy this, you don't. I don't care really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never thought about how people put me in a different, like, how am I going to sell to this person? Yeah, I am a strange mixture of things, and from the creative to the analytic. I mean, I would say I'm probably more creative, and I've become more analytical as I've grown, as I've
Did you
learned.
feel like that was a muscle, like it took intention to
Oh, for
develop?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm mildly dyslexic. All three of my kids have dyslexia. And
That's probably
that's
super fun when it comes to numbers then, huh?
Oh yeah, or details. Like I am not. I
Getting
mean,
your investors together and you're like, I am so sorry I switched to one with a 9.
yeah, it's funny because as as somebody who has learning differences, right? I mean, I struggled in school. Like I did well in anything that had a creative slant, like geometry, two different things. Actually, I killed it. It just made sense to me. Maybe that's where I got the idea that I wanted to be an architect. But algebra, forget it, man. Like I was probably cheating off people, or teachers were probably passing me just because they were being nice. But it was a struggle. And so when I learned to underwrite properties, I I paid for training, and I got up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I forced myself to learn because it doesn't come natural to me. And I work one of my partners on some real estate. He's the most detailed person ever, like spreadsheet wizard. I'm so in awe of what he does, and I could never do that. Maybe not never, but like what he does naturally, it's taken me so long to do, and I'm still learning. But it's now an acquired skill where I feel confident that I can take. In fact, I was just looking at a flip here locally with a partner, and he's like, I think the budget's too. I'm like, yo, I built this spreadsheet. Let's look at it together. Let's do the analysis. And I've probably learned that I trust my gut more than I, probably trust data, right? That's because I'm an intuitive, I'm an emotional person for the most part, but I've learned that can get me in trouble. So I need to counterbalance that with some good data.
Yeah, I bet Vegas loves you, huh?
Right. Yeah.
I
I don't
intuitively
gamble.
feel, I think, red.
That's funny, man. That's the game that I actually love to play in Vegas because it's like I see it as a 50-50 chance. I'm like, you can't get better odds than that, which it's probably not.
No,
But
it's approximately 50-50, sure.
yeah, it's like red or black, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I've it's definitely been an acquired skill to become more analytical. I think my dad, I have he's probably more analytical than my mom. Actually, yes, he is. He's a fairly black and white thinker, great manager, great leader, great business person. And so, I probably have that within me, but I've had to sort of awaken it. And now I'm like, today I was in the spreadsheet and I was like kind of lost in that process as a creative process. It's just really fascinating to me because I never thought I would enjoy that, but I'm like, this is actually pretty fun. Like I kind of got into the flow. So
You're saying getting lost in the flow of like the spreadsheets and building that out and understanding like the
like
data,
analyzing all the numbers and like thinking about it, which is so nerdy, but like I've come to really enjoy that as a kind of as a creative pursuit, like as a creative outlet. Like the same thing like if I'm drawing or painting or doing whatever that is creative, that same flow state is happening when I'm like in that spreadsheet, really trying to figure out those numbers and like what works and like doing some formulas. It kind of like saying it out loud still like, who are you? But that's been really interesting to me. So it's this acquired skill that took me a long time, but once I kind of learned it's now something I enjoy and I appreciate.
I think also to give a little flavor to the stakes, like what's your current buy box when you're thinking about wanting to do these investments and stuff? Like what's kind of the average deal that you're looking at?
For multifamily, usually around 5 million, in that neighborhood, 5 to 10 million. So that's like purchase price.
So in some regard, I think, I'll give your flowers. Yeah, it's a little weird to get lost in spreadsheets for sure. But for your mind,
I know.
being attached to the outcome, right? It's always, when we lose sight of the outcome, I think is when it gets impersonal, is when it gets kind of like begrudging to go through just numbers for numbers' sake. But if you can have this vision of what it could be or what it could mean for someone living there, the rhyme and the reason to doing that, then I think that does make it a lot more exciting.
Well, I think you're right. And for me, if I kind of, do a little bit more digging, it triggers my, I think I learned this in design. Like most people think design is a visual manifestation, right? Like, oh, look at this cool design on this. No, that's not design, right? That's actually just art, or it's a artifact, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an artifact of design. Design is problem solving. And that's the thing that I think I've realized through being in the creative industry is that, the process of problem solving to me, and that's what creation is as well, is very gratifying. And so I think when I'm doing that underwriting, right, and I'm using color and I'm paying attention to the layout because I appreciate those things, and it probably looks better than most other, financial analysts. I wouldn't call myself a financial analyst by any stretch, but like I'm paying it because I'm, one, I appreciate that, but two, it's like it's triggering my motivation, like to be economically motivated. So I'm like, okay, this is a cool house. Let's just think about today as I'm looking at this flip. So I have multifamily and then I have flips. Those are kind of the two things I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at this flip today. Actually, my contractor wants to partner on this project, which I'm super excited about because that's like, anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway,
Either works.
So I'm looking at it, and to me, what's motivating me to go through this process is just thinking about the outcome. To your point, thinking about like, this is an awesome opportunity. Look at this rundown house. We can get it for a good price. How much can we actually put into it? What's our profit margin, right? What are all these things I can sort of like move around, and I'm problem solving, right? In this spreadsheet. And to me, that's a very similar expression to designing something, right? Because like if I'm designing a UI for software, there's a very specific process to that. It almost is on the edge of science, like scientific method, right? Of like creation, testing, like failing, succeeding, whatever, getting that data back, trying again. So maybe I've become more of a nerd as I've worked in technology and software, but just because I've become more aware of what it is and like the layers, and the layers have been sort of revealed to me, and now I'm appreciating it as a creative process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think about that like one, the way that relates to me is kind of like a trigger point for whoever you're trying to attract as maybe an investor, a role player in a deal. The, there was a memory triggered there for one of the first times. So I worked on roofs, was one of my first jobs.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long. I mean, let me back up for a second. I'm sorry, guys, if you see all the coloring. I did snowboarding today, so the raccoon eyes. The skin is not meant to be in the sun, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so did not take long before I realized, hey, I'm not built to be on a roof in Florida. And so I started selling knives that summer. And I remember I was having a little bit of struggles. And my manager, we pinpointed where I was losing some confidence in the close. And she said, when they say this, you say this. And I fought it and I fought it and fought it. And finally, she sat down with me, made me memorize the lines. And I remember the first time I, quote unquote, deployed that trap, watching the gears turn and them decide, hey, I want to buy that $1,200 set of knives, blew my mind. Right. And then I was left with struggling with feeling like icky, like I had manipulated them in some form or fashion. And then, like you kind of, as a salesperson, and maybe you can relate to this or maybe you can't, but you kind of go through these different waves of understanding people's motivations, how to communicate in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you're kind of describing is these different trigger points. Like I love nerding out. Like now we're building our sales training program and, like throwing a heat map on a website and seeing where do people gravitate to? Like what are they most interested? Because I have this perception of what might be appealing to them. But when you dig into the data side of things, you realize like, hey, there's themes, there's patterns, there's congruency in the way people think and operate. And at the end of the day, like what needs to be executed on. So I think that's a cool, kind of parsing through this and relating in some form or fashion. But I think it's cool when you're thinking about like, okay, like how are they going to perceive when I'm putting together this proposal or this underwriting or, whatever,
Yeah.
like what's going to be the most important thing here?
Well, and what you're hitting on is something that I learned through working in. I went from communication design. I was working for a firm in Denver. It's called Monocle, and I was a part of this organization called AIGA, which was a graphic. I think it used to stand for graphic arts, but mostly graphic design. And the person who was the president of that, I met him at this conference, and I was like, "What are you doing now?" He's like, "I'm at IBM." And I'm like, "What the like IBM?" But I ended up applying, going there. IBM Design created this huge thing, and that's what took me back to Texas and went to Austin. And what I started to learn there was human-centered design and experience design. And what was fascinating about that was all of a sudden this training that I had as a marriage and family therapist in my undergrad. Like I never went on and did a terminal degree in that. Like I could have gone on and did become a licensed professional counselor, that sort of, which is what I wanted to do. But then a long story there. Maybe we'll circle back to it. But all of a sudden, this social science piece of creating something for somebody started to have relevance from my background. I'm like, oh, this all like another sort of like merging of experience. And so psychology, some of those the softer sciences of like really understanding people. So what you're talking about is like you're getting real time data and understanding of human behavior, which is completely fascinating, right? And it helps you solve the problem and make a better product.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of that is like this idea of generative understanding, where, and this kind of gets into the sort of like research and human, the sort of pre-product anything. It's like, what problems are humans trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
And is there a product or service out there to help them solve that problem?
So,
or maybe we have a product or service.
One's kind of like proactive, one's reactionary.
Exactly. Right. So, and that was a whole sort of like methods and skills that I learned, which I'm applying today to so most people think real estate investing and they have this certain picture in their head of like what I do. but I'm taking a very like human-centered design approach to building a real estate investing company. And that's through creativity and understanding, and like there's all of those things are at play within the thing I'm trying to build today. But that was like, most people don't understand, like, where did, why does Airbnb do so well? Maybe that's not the best example, but you know what I mean? Like when it came on the scene, it was like a huge disruptor. Those guys that started that were from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. They weren't even business people, they were designers, right? And they like, that's why it's so like designerly from the ground up, is because they started with really truly human-centered design and understanding what people needed, the problem they're trying to solve, and then created a really beautiful kind of accessible, intuitive experience to enable that. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but
I think at some level too, you find, I mean, I hate to say this, but my perception in a lot of ways, and I'll explain it, but like you ask, some founders, it's like, hey, what do you do? And maybe they own like a SaaS company, and it's like, we're a human optimization company. It's like, well, no, you sell a fucking CRM actually. But I mean, so in some regards, I find it kind of tacky when it's like people tell you like their mission, and immediately in the same breath, I want to back that down, because it's so true. When you focus on kind of like the bigger messaging or the core competency of what you're trying to achieve, the company, the product, whatever, is almost like a byproduct of that. And so I don't know why I find it tacky. It's like, hey, what do you do, or what'd you build, or whatever? And they're like, we're not Uber, we're like a logistics, whatever. It's like, okay, I hear you, but
we're the Airbnb of CRMs. That's what I love it when people say that. Like we're like this, but we're the Uber of pizza delivery. Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, what most software is just it's bridging the gap between supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if you can do that in a very intuitive, easy to use way, you're likely going to be successful, right? Like if it's functionally sound, if it's aesthetically sound, and it's I don't know, like if it has a good business plan, I guess that's be the third one. Then it'll probably be. And it's interesting that I feel like, I got out of technology and went into the most archaic, most, slow industry that I think still exists. Even though there's a lot of prop tech, like property technology, like real estate. I mean, I've been working on the same property right now that we're under contract on, that we're going to close in May. I think I first went and looked at that property back in October, like when I was leaving Amazon, right? It's contracts and like everything is just so slow.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much room for disrupting that industry, and I think a lot of people are trying to do it, which is a cool space to be in, because I'm actually experimenting with creating some software applications using AI, and I'm like, is there an opportunity here? But at the end of the day, honestly, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to make money. That's what I want to do. Is like, I want to build wealth. Let's not beat around the bush.
Right. Yeah.
But do it in a very like authentic and altruistic way. And for me, the basic level of all that is providing shelter for people.
Mm-hmm.
And like people are at this, even though it's like it's still human-centered design. It's not, real estate investing is still human-centered product, and ultimately that's why I still love it, is because it's creating community, it's creating safe, healthy places for people to live. And if the experience of both the people that invest with us to provide this housing, and the people that live there have a great experience, then there's a ton of like business returns that happen, and a lot of good things to the bottom line. But that, to me, that's not like, that's not the most important thing. I think I mentioned this to you, Colton, when we were talking in Scottsdale, but like, and this is something that came out of DU, where my wife actually went and got her MBA, but they talk about triple bottom line, right? So people, profit, planet. And that's the thing that I think about. And I ultimately left Amazon to go build a company that I feel like is following those principles. And I'm doing it in a way that, you know, is sort of the tried and true way to build wealth, which is through real estate. It's not the fastest way,
Right.
but it's the best way. And so I already had a head start because I had been doing it since 2007, 2008. So I kind of knew some things. And so anyway, I feel like, I don't know where I was going with that thought. So feel free to chime in and ask a question, but it felt like I was going in a direction that was somewhat salient, but
yeah, no, for sure. Salient, saline, salty, all the things. How can you help me understand though? How did you end up at Amazon in the first place? Did you get poached or recruited or applied? Like what?
Yeah, I did. I got recruited. I was working so I was a director at Bank of America running the design team for all of the retail banking. So that's like all the normal stuff that most of us use, like checking, savings, car loans, whatever. I don't know. There's some other things in there. All home loans. Yeah, I was in Austin, and the logistics organization for Amazon, which is all of the drivers, delivery, lockers, everything worldwide. They were building a team. There was a new head of design, and they wanted part of their team to be in Austin and part of it to be in Seattle. And so, yeah, I got recruited to go there, and it was awesome. And I got to hire a team. So I got to kind of build my own team by hiring the people that I had worked with in the past, and some of the people that I'm like, man, I want them on my team again. I'm a big believer in team. I'm a big believer in like who, not how. And then a year later, they laid everyone off. It was a gut punch.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. I think I hired a principal designer, amazing person. They left their job, took the holiday break, and then came back, and their offer was rescinded. So it was like a year of excitement and, you know, awesome work that we're doing, and all of a sudden just the rug got pulled out from under us. And then at Amazon, if you get laid off, they kind of help you find your way inside the company, because it's, there's so many other things you can do there, which is one of the cool things about Amazon. And I found my way to Prime Video. And, that was the first time I'd worked in kind of entertainment, which is a whole nother interesting. I went from like logistics, right, which is all about like delivering things to people and efficiency ratios. That's how you make money.
Mm-hmm.
To entertainment, which is engage more. That's how we make money. And then ultimately advertising. And my team was working on all of the additional, like we call them channels, but I guess they're like HBO, now Apple TV, Discovery, all those kind of started becoming a part of Prime Video, which is pretty cool. So my team was working directly on that.
I think one of the most sobering things you said to me about that experience was when, what was it, the lady called in because something didn't continue to play after like her binge session or something, and
you know what
I'm speaking to?
Yeah. That was, I think that's one of the things that I'll tell the story, but it was one of those moments where I just started to become more uncomfortable with what I was doing. Because so we would talk about, customer experience. We want to understand what our experience is like. So it's like looking at the heat map. We did all of that stuff, right? We're using all of the tools that we have available to understand what the experience is like. One of those is listening to calls. So people call in and they talk to us, customer service representative. And this woman had binge watched some show that we had, some episodic show, and ultimately had got to the point where it wasn't free anymore. And so there's a free trial, I think the first 3 seasons or something. And then the 4th season had to start paying per episode. And the story basically is she stayed up all night, she binge watched this, and she called customer service at 4 a.m. wanting to watch this next episode, but she had to pay for it, and she was pissed off that she had to pay for it, and she felt like it was a bait and switch, right? And there's two ways to look at that. The way in which the business looked at it was, hey, we definitely should be letting her just watch this content, right? Like the longer she engages with the content, the more money we make, and the better our product does, the better our business does, that sort of thing. That's a very good business lens, right? The other lens, which I tended to sort of is like, wow, what is this woman avoiding in her life? Like, and maybe that's not fair of me to pass that judgment on somebody else, but it just made me think holistically, like broad strokes, right? So we, and a lot of applications are like this, where it's how many hours or how long do you engage with the platform? That's how they value their well, that's how they gauge success.
Right.
And I just became increasingly uncomfortable with that, right? Because I'm looking around and people are just on their phones, they're engaged on a screen, they're not having conversations, or they're not engaging with the world around them. And I'm like, I am part of that problem because I am contributing to a product to make it easier to use, to engage longer. And I'm all about what, Prime Video, Netflix, like I sit there and watch shows with my wife. That was the other end of it, right? Is that when we did research, when we did really try to understand how people approach that product, and what was great about it is that there's this beautiful piece of it that is about human connection, right? Especially during COVID. But like, I sit down with my wife, I sit down with my kids, like we have this moment, we watch this thing, I get lost in the story. Those are very, very, beautiful, close human experiences that we all share. When the indulgence is like, I just stayed up for 8 hours and watched the show, and I'm pissed off now because I can't finish it, and that's where I was like, man, this is
Kind of like the dark side to it, huh?
Yeah, that's like abuse.
Yeah.
And again, I'm passing judgment. I totally get that, but like for me, that was a moment where I was like, I want to kind of go do something else.
What was the moment, if you can recall? Was it like a clouds part aha, or was it a slow burn and the frog realized I'm in boiling water?
Well, it's interesting. I think because I am I do like making money, and Amazon has traditionally paid really well. It's easy to sort of not think about that and just be like, well, it's a good job, right? It's a good company, got a good 401k. And I would say, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I don't know how many people listen to this, but like, there's probably a lot of people at places like Amazon that are very unhappy because of very similar things, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was just a moment of one, I just became unhappy. Like I just wasn't, and I think the people around me could sense that, they could see it, and then I felt like I wasn't doing a good job. Whatever that means, right? I wasn't showing up in the way that I'd shown up before, and it started to become kind of this existential thing of like, is this job and the money associated with it more important than my happiness? And so I think it was a slow kind of realization, but there were moments, especially in the last few months, where I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Sure.
Like I got to go do something else. And then ultimately, sometimes the stars align for you, the planets align, whatever aligns. And they had a restructuring internally, and ultimately I moved to a different team, and then they wanted to like maybe move me to London, and we were talking about, and I just sort of put my hand up and said, hey, I'll just bow out.
Sure.
And go do something else. And they were like, okay, cool. And I had a really good talk with the head of design there, and he's a great person and was really empathetic. And he was like, yeah, I get it, man. Like, this is not an easy place to be. Yeah. And so I just needed to get away from that for a while and go do something else. And that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that too, because we had some pretty vulnerable conversations in Scottsdale, and I think, that's just, I remember having a conversation with a buddy at Burning Man, actually. We were riding our bikes, and he was, kind of confiding me about a few different things in life. And I didn't realize until like a month or two later, like how pivotal that was for him. Sometimes you just channel messages or whatever, and he's talking about a relationship and his job or something or whatever, and he's like, the gist of it was basically like, I want to go for blank, but I'm scared. And my retort to that was like, hey, it's okay. People settle every day, and you can continue not to choose, and that is a choice, and that's okay. Like, most people settle. It will grow on you. It's okay. You won't notice. You just keep doing what you're doing, and it'll be fine. And I guess that hit him like a brick, and so a month or two later, he kind of reflected that back to me, and he was like, dude, I didn't realize, like, I wasn't choosing to go for the thing I wanted to go for. And by not choosing to do that thing, I was choosing just comfort. He wasn't crazy unhappy. Like, I think that's a really important part too. It's like, I don't think everybody's meant to go for their dream. Like, I'm a big fan of that book, The Way of the Superior Man. Like, that woke me up to a lot of different things. Like, we have these fantasies in our head of like what I want my life to look like, either the girl or the guy I want to go for, the job I want to do, but we never pursue it. So it's like this mental masturbation, this fantasy of like, oh man, it would be so good. But sometimes you poke it and you go, oh, actually, that's not what I want. And you have to discover the new path, right? Like, you have to continually choose to go for the thing. And sometimes the door's locked or the door opens and it's nothing. Right. So I think that's what I wanted to point out about like you choosing to go for real estate investing. I mean, that can be a very scary thing, right? To leave that comfortable path, but also sometimes the universe does give you a little divine guidance and say like, hey, I'm giving you a fork in the road here.
Yeah, no, I felt that, and it took me a little bit to appreciate that, and to come to terms with it. And I have now, and I am very appreciative of all of everything I've learned and everything that has happened up till now. And even at this point, I'm like, is real estate investing really the thing I want to do long term? Right? It's a bridge for me. Mm-hmm. It's a way to build wealth. It's a way to make money. I enjoy it. I think there's a lot of things about it, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm missing. I was telling somebody in my accountability pod the other day. I said I miss drawing. Like, I used to get to draw a lot in my, as an executive, like, leader, less of like the day-to-day design, but I was still involved with that creative process. And anytime I wanted to, I could get into it. But I miss, I'm like, maybe I should do music again, or maybe I should. So it's interesting, the awakenings that are happening now of like, real estate is a creative process, but and building a company is a creative process. But at the same time, like I need to do something that's not about producing.
That's not design. Something. That's creative.
Right. Like, I just need to do something that it is just creative. It's just the output is just, it doesn't matter. Right. And so I'm asking myself those questions right now of like, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? How does that happen? Like, why is that important? How do I fit that into my life? And
let me ask you this: what would you define as the meaning of life?
Wow. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is just to be in service. And that's my big why. Like I said, I like to make money, but my mission is to be available. And that's actually what crystallized for me in Scottsdale, was that I want availability in my life. I want to be available to my family. I want to be available to people. And this is why I'm okay with leaving Amazon, because I don't want to trade time for money. Mm-hmm. I want to build something that creates money, that is not dependent on my time, mm-hmm. that creates availability for me to go and serve people.
Yeah.
Because that's where I find the true joy. Like, I love, like, if you needed me to come to your house and like help dig post holes for your fence, I would love that. I'm being like dead serious. Like that's just, for me, that's just what I'm like. I want to be available to serve
See a
you know, my
person with a
parents,
flat tire be able to pull over and not have to
exactly,
worry
like
about the
have the
meeting you got to
time
get
and
to.
100%, man. So, um, so yeah, that for me, I think I've found a lot of just gratification and fulfillment and service of others, and that's the thing that I want to continue. But do it through not having to worry about, you know, taking care of my family and making money and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I totally resonate with that. I mean, I've been, I don't know if you've heard of Scott Galloway, if you've
Yeah,
seen any of his stuff coming around.
yeah.
My wife and I were talking about him today because one of the things that I love that he talked about is specifically if you were to pursue art, you know, it's like statistically speaking, and you know, it's the 0.01% that are going to make that have the aspirations of making a substantial income that will achieve that versus, you know, that whole other spectrum of people that have skills that they're really, really good at. And should they choose to pursue that, would open up a life, would provide a vehicle to open up a life to the availability or to just flat out riches or whatever, like the internal mechanism, the motivation actually is. But it's that separation of passion or the lack of infusing the passion into the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm quote unquote good at sales, but what I love is understanding how people think, right? Like, why are you agreeing with me? Why are you disagreeing with me? Oftentimes it's not for the reason I think. And the more I can dig into that and understand, oh, I'm just saying it the wrong way. We're thinking the same thought. It's the communication that's breaking down.
Yeah.
Right. And so by me understanding more and more about like what motivates people, like that's the thing that genuinely drives me. Right. Like I love just understanding people.
Totally.
Sales just happens to be the vehicle that helps me get there to be able to help people to change their life, to align with maybe my solution is the thing for their problem. I don't know. So I think that gets missed a lot with pursue your passion, you know, because if I was just to pursue my passion, I'd be dishing out mushrooms everywhere thinking that's going to change the world. You know, I don't think that's really, at least right now in the timeline, that's not the answer for generating substantial income.
I love how you put that, man. I mean, I've as somebody in sales, like how you're sort of still like how it's a human-centered pursuit, right? Of like truly trying to understand people and find the best solution for them, and that's a really good salesman. And no, I've never thought about that before, but yeah. Anyway, just a quip, like really trying to understand people, and I find that fascinating as well. That's what I loved about design is that it you know, you have to go deep with people to understand, because most people won't tell you, like they're not going to tell you how they did something or why they do something. Like you have to really you have to kind of dig a little deeper and understand behavior, and you know, and that to me is also fascinating. I wouldn't say I'm doing a lot of that work right now, but I have investors, and in some ways I feel like I'm in sales when I'm meeting with investors, and I'm really trying not to be in sales, because at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm not selling you anything. I'm providing an opportunity for you to invest in something that's going to grow your wealth and provide you tax benefits, or do it tax free through a self-directed retirement fund. But like, I don't have to sell you. Like, you either want to or you don't. You either have the money or you don't. And maybe I need to take some of your sales training, but
well, I mean, just to interject for a second too,
yeah,
because the way you operate, like that post you put in our group the other day, I think as a salesperson, like we're always selling something,
True.
right? And if you know that investor is the perfect investor for, and this is the perfect opportunity, operating from integrity. I mean, another way is just say conviction in the close, right? Like whoever has the highest conviction oftentimes is going to win the close. And when you posted that in the group the other day, and we don't have to give a ton of context, but you're like, hey, this guy's energy just doesn't align. Like it's just not, it's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, like when you're saying, hey, I wasn't a great salesperson, but you did pretty well, it's because I talk about this in our training all the time. There's no real magic words. Like structure can help, explaining things a certain way can help, but at the end of the day, like we are built with amazing bullshit radars. And so if you just operate from integrity and have a lot of conviction in what you're doing in the process and know like your solution is the right solution for that person and being willing to walk away or say no.
Yeah.
I think that's the majority of the process in sales. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah. That was not my experience with roofing sales, but
Well, I
that
did
is
sell
my,
knives for 11 years, so I can relate on a certain level.
yeah, but that is my I've never worked in sales other than in roofing sales, other than like always be selling, like selling yourself, like in design, specifically in these large companies. Like I felt like I was in a sales role many times. But that's kind of my the vision of if I wasn't like to be somebody, and I guess that's what I guess in a sense that's what I'm doing. I'm like, I want to have integrity. I'm offering you the best thing that we can, and also to your point, like I don't have to work with you. Like if you're a jerk or if you don't have the right and I talk about that a lot. Like we want to create a community of investors that are like-minded, right? And basically, like that boils down to that triple bottom line of people, profit, planet, because we're going to make decisions that are always in the best interest of the bottom line. It's going to be a beneficial thing for the people that live there, or it's going to be the right thing for the planet. And that's actually going to be an expense, but it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And so if you're coming to us and, I'm trying to quote unquote sell you on this investment and you're like, well, you've got too much money or whatever, I'm gonna be like, this is probably the best, right? And we're just going to shake hands and walk away and be like, good luck.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that perspective you have of like, it really, it shouldn't feel like sales. It should feel like, a relationship, a conversation, and I love that. I guess that's helping me kind of rewire my perspective of what sales is.
Well, I'm a very visual person, and I think the way I've explained it to a lot of people I've coached is oftentimes people perceive sales as a tug of war, a game of tug of war, and whoever has the most conviction will pull that little flag to their side and win, right? And oftentimes all that means is your prospect, that person, and because it's not just a sales thing, it could be your spouse or friends or whatever, right? And we know like, hey, actually this is the solution and I'm trying to help them see the thing. So I like to view it more as like if we were to sit on the same side of a picnic table and we're going to decide which hike we're going on, right? You think that's the fastest way to get to the top of the mountain. But I know for a fact, because I've been on this hike so many times, that's the fastest way to go. If we're sitting at the picnic table and looking at the same scene, looking at that mountain, how do I communicate effectively to you? That's the right way to go. You might have been on hikes before, twisted your ankle. You might have gone with other people that didn't know as much. And so we have like all these preconceived notions, insecurities, doubts, and worries, concerns to get through. So it's my job to communicate effectively enough if I know this is the right solution to help you see the same image I'm seeing before you even take the first step.
I love that.
That's just the way I like to think about it.
Yeah. That's good. Also, it demonstrates how quickly you have become a Coloradan.
Oh, dude, the hiking though. I'm so stoked for the hiking. When we were coming down the mountain today, everything's green and alive, and all the lakes that were frozen over are like, oh, dude. I'm so stoked to be here.
There's definitely times that I miss it. Where I live now, I have a lot of open space and hiking. I'm really grateful for it because it's not everywhere has that.
Nature is nature, man. I'm so stoked to get into nature. So as we kind of land the plane here, anything that you feel like if you were to, I don't know, sum up any wisdom, bequeath any wisdom to the audience or anything we didn't cover that maybe you were like really stoked to talk about? Anything come up there?
Wow. Put me on the spot, man.
I'm trying.
You had talked about something earlier and we didn't get into it, but it's something I'm kind of getting into now and discovering. I've you and I talked about this. Like I did a medicine journey with a friend of mine. I don't know if we did. Did I talk to it? I don't know if I talked to you about this, but his wife's a therapist.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
he's helping to sort of facilitate some of these journeys. And so it was my first one ever. And one of the things that you said, which was learning to parent yourself, has been a recent theme in my life. My wife and I, and like, we're taking a marriage class right now with these two people that are, helping to facilitate journeys, but also doing marriage and family therapy. And it's interesting that we talked about my childhood, but I think the wisdom to share, or the wisdom to highlight, or bequeath, as you say, is one of the things that I've learned the most in this entrepreneurial journey is, or that I've appreciated the most, is like the journey inward, and learning to really trust, not only trust myself, but like really going deep and learning to unearth some of the things that have held me back in the past, that are really related to my childhood and the trauma, and learning how to parent myself now. Those kind of those experiences, like the I'm getting tripped up because I'm like getting a little emotional, but like the power there has just been incredible, of like, how much more can we achieve if we're able to go to those places of hurt and trauma, and learn how to parent ourselves, and not even necessarily heal, but just be aware, right? And take responsibility. And like that, I think that's been an amazing part of this journey for me, is how much I've been able to realize what's there. Because I think in an environment, and not for everybody, for me, in that environment of corporate America, I was able to kind of just sweep that under the rug, because somebody's telling me what to do. I can just show up and just be robotic. Whereas now I can't. Like, I'm having to depend on myself, and I have a lot of flaws. I have a lot of things that are deeply, embedded, that I haven't even seen or heard or talked to, right? And now I'm having to unearth those things. And it's an accelerant for me to a better marriage, a better relationship, and ultimately, achieving those things as an entrepreneur. So I would say, if there's any wisdom there, like, go to that place, like, find, that whole parenting yourself, I think is a really powerful thing. And I'm really glad you brought that up in the beginning, and that we were able to sort of circle back to it.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible landing point, because I mean, I found my way to a very similar position in life, realizing unconsciously that I was kind of self-medicating. And I mean that in the best sense possible, with psychedelics. Like, it wasn't like I was numbing or running, I was uncovering. And I was, tried a lot of different modalities. And for me, psychedelic therapy really did incredible wonders for helping me understand different perspectives and how things came to be in my life. And at the end of the day, like, no one's going to come to save you.
Yeah.
And that's a very tough reality to come to grips with. But if we can choose to be empowered and emboldened by, like, it is my responsibility, and if I choose to take up that responsibility, things eventually do get better.
Yeah. And that's funny. That's the module for this week that I'm about to go watch with my wife, is 100% responsibility. That's what it's called. So we're about to get into it. So I love it, man.
Cool. Well, if people want to connect with you, I mean, there's Arrows in the Wild, right? Is that the preferred spot to send them to?
Yeah. Arrows in the Wild at Instagram. I guess it's still called Arrows in the Wild. Yeah.
I think so.
Feel free to DM me. But Jarrod is my JARJOP. That's my normal Instagram. And then Common Capital Investing, that's our investing company, commoncapitalinvesting.com. But other than that, yeah, hit me up.
Cool. Well, yeah. So I think that's a really solid plug at the end. You like making money. So if people have money and they also like to make money, maybe reach out.
Yeah, we have a deal right now that we're closing in May. We've got a few spots for investors. If anybody's interested, I'd love to talk about it. But other than that, just, I love building a network. I love meeting people. I love, I'm a pretty social person. So
yeah, and all the links and stuff will be in the show notes too. So if that's you, check out the notes. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys. We got some more guests coming up. I believe next week is going to be a little bit more on the woo-woo side. To the tease for that's going to be around mushrooms. We have a mushroom grower coming on, so feel free to tune into that. But hey, we love you guys. See you next week.
it.